Hi guys, and welcome back to our endgame lessons. So today we're going to go over the king and pawn versus a king endings. And in the previous video we talked about the opposition. So I assume that you've already watched this video. So now you know that opposition is very good for you. So today I'm basically going to show you 4 different positions in these endings. And I'm going to start with this one. The kings are on their starting squares and this pawn also. So I'm going to tell you right away that if you want to win these positions, you want to have your king in front of the pawn. And I will show you why now. But first of all, let's see what happens if you play a move such as e4, which is a big blunder, as you will see. Now black gets the come forward, and now he's in time to play this move, king to e5, and this is kind of a position. I mean, the pawn is in front of the both kings, but the point is that white's king can't go forward here, and he has to go, for example, here, if he doesn't want to lose his pawn, or here also. And now as black you want to be able to take the opposition when white goes forward. So you want to play king to e6 and just stay on the same file as this pawn here. So when white wants to go forward, you take the opposition here. And this is basically just a drawn position. You take the position again. Whatever he does, he doesn't have a lot of options. You again stay on the same file. And I mean, when at one point he has to advance the pawn, and this is just good for you because you come into the same position again. I mean, now white has the position, but you stay on the same file as the pawn, and you're prepared when he goes forward, you take the position. And then at the end, this is going to be a draw here, stalemate, or if he goes somewhere else, anywhere, then you take the pawn, and this is also a draw. So that's why this move e4 is a big blunder. So the correct way of playing here is king to d2 or king to f2. Let's say you play king to f2, black moves forward, you do the same thing, and now you take the opposition. If black goes there, you can take the opposition here. So when you take the position, now black has to move to one square. I mean, let's say he moves there, and you just shoulder this king. You take away these two squares from him, because of course he wants to be on this file to protect the promotion of this pawn, to stop this pawn from advancing and at the end promoting. So you just take away these two squares, and now if he goes there, this is of course bad, because as you can see, you're protecting these three squares, and on the next moves you can just push your pawn forward like this here, and you take the position, and again you just promote to a queen, so like this. So the other option is for him here to not to go there, but to go here. But now again you take the position, and you just do this again and again, and now you can see your pawn is now just going to come forward, and now you just come forward with your pawn, and this is just winning now again. You just promote to a queen. So that's why, remember, always put your king in front of the pawn if you want to win these kinds of positions. So now let's move to our next position here, and this is a pawn on the A or on the H file. So this is a lot of times a draw, and the basic rule here is if you are black, you want to get to this square or these squares. These squares are basically your two safe squares, and you're just going to move from A8 to B8 forever, and it's going to be a draw. So let me show you this. If black is on move here, he wants to play king to c7 to get to one of these safe squares. And now, if white tries to go forward, this is a draw. Because if you can achieve one of these two squares, you immediately stop calculating and go for this, because this is 100% a draw. And you just move here like we said. White can't do anything. If he decides to push the pawn, you just move there, and this is stalemate. Or if he moves somewhere else, you win the pawn, and this is a draw. So that's why the other option is for the king to come here to protect the square, but now you're going to win this pawn here, because as you can see, king can't protect it. So now you just win the pawn, and it's a draw. But if white is on move here, he actually wins, because he's going to stop you from coming to these safe squares. So he plays king to b6, and now you don't have the possibility of going to this c7 square, so you have to go somewhere like this. And now again he stops you from coming anywhere here, and this is just a winning position now. Whatever you do, he just pushes the pawn and promotes the queen. Okay, so remember this: if your opponent has an a pawn or an h pawn, you want to get your king to these safe squares, and if you are white in this position, you want to prevent your opponent from coming to one of these squares. So our third position here is the position you can see here, and the reason I wanted to show this position to you is because here it doesn't matter who is on move, white is always going to be winning. And you might think this is really strange. I mean, if white is on move, then you just take the position, and we said this is very good, so why is it winning? And that's because this pawn here is pretty far advanced, and this king is in front of the pawn. So this gives you the possibility of just pushing the pawn, and the tempos here are really in your favor. And now, I mean, black can go anywhere but here, and you just step forward with your king and support this square, so on the next move you promote to a queen. And if black is on move here, then it's even more obvious. You have the position as white. If he goes there, you just shoulder him and take these two squares from him, and then just promote to a queen, right? So I just wanted to show this position to let you know, if you have this in a position, don't worry, it's not a draw, it's winning for you. Whatever this is, except on this A and H file, of course. So the last thing I want to mention about these endings is the rule of the square. In this position, you basically see that your king is not going to be able to help this pawn promote, because it's too far away from it. So here it's really a battle between this pawn going forward and this king catching it before it promotes. So if you don't want to calculate really a lot of moves here, then you can just know about this rule of a square, and you're going to be able to see if you can catch the pawn or not really faster. So you just basically draw a square here, as you can see here, 5 squares here from the pawn and 5 squares here, and you can see that it's a square here, it's obvious. And now if black manages to get into this square, then he's going to be able to catch the pawn. And if he isn't able to get into this square, then the pawn is going to promote. And by the square I mean any of these squares, of course, inside the square. So here if black is on move, he gets into this square and he's going to be able to catch this pawn, as we can see here. And this is the proof, right in time. But if, let's say, black wasn't on move here, if white is on move, he pushes the pawn forward, and you can see the square is really smaller here, and the king can't catch it. It's one tempo behind. So You can see the proof here, one tempo behind, and white promotes the queen. And wherever the pawn is, basically you can draw this square. For example, if the pawn was here, then you have a square here. This is a really useful thing to know, and I mean, if you're in time pressure, you can just skip the calculating part and just look at this rule of a square, and it can help you sometimes, so it's useful to know it. So that's everything I had to say about this king and pawn versus king endings, and I hope you find it useful, and I will see you in the next video.